And so that's where now you start to wonder, what's the value of the human, all right, if the human doesn't have the skill and is asking the AI to like build the prompts. And so you wonder like, what are the valuable skills that we're looking for in humans? So what is left? What is left? And I think what's left at the end, right, is being creative in such a way that the AI wouldn't. Every time that founders ask me like how to hire a growth person, and I think about it, I always land on like effective craziness.
I always said that I think being lazy is an advantage.
I was gonna get there.
Like, I'm very lazy. I hate doing things. So then you automate them. So
Wait, hold on. You hate doing things?
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's like I hate doing things repetitively. Like I have to do one thing like 3 times. It's like, oh, again this shit.
I gotta cook more than 3 times.
No, I do think that's one thing where we aligned very early on is we both define ourselves as like very efficient, lazy marketers, right? Very, very early.
I love that.
Yeah, and when I interview people, right, I'm always very curious. I look into like people who like will admit that they're lazy and they're finding like workarounds to like solve for their laziness versus the people who just brute force it through like hard work. Because if you brute force it through hard work, like eventually you're gonna hit a wall. There's only so much you can work.
Yeah.
All right, only so much. But if you're lazy and your sole goal in life is to make your life easier, you're a fucking genius.
It's like did you see, I remember this story, I can't remember who it was, this hacker that just hacked the school system.
Yeah.
Changed all his grades, and you're just like, if you just had put half of this effort to actually study, you actually would have gotten an A to start with, you know? Like, that's not the point.
To me, it's 2 things. It's like lazy, and the other thing I'm a big believer on is chaos. Like, I think as marketers now, what's most important is being creative, and creativity to me comes from chaos. Like, if you're ordered and everything, like, I don't think you can be as creative.
What you're telling us is we need to teach marketers how to be lazy and chaotic.
I do think that if you're looking at what's going on in the world right now, 2025, there are things that matter more and there are things that matter less. Hiring matters less than building workflows, obviously, okay? Because like all those hiring skills and building like a large team with like multiple levels of like layers of management, they're completely useless now.
Yeah.
Allocating capital to technology is almost impossible now because I should be good at this. I don't know. I can make a prediction about what technology is going to work out 6 months, 9 months from now. I have no clue. It goes too fast, right? And so those 2 skills like completely useless. However, creativity still probably the most important because now that everybody's using platforms and vibe coding stuff, like we are in a world where like all the cars are like black and gray and white. Right? And so you got, how do you stand out? When everybody can build tools very easily, everybody can send an email with Clay, whatever. Like, how does your content stand out? How does your work stand out in such a way that you attract the audience that you care about? And that is creativity.
And I agree with that, but to me, taste is about having a good idea on like, is this good or is it bad? Like taste to me helps me analyze existing options to choose one. Creativity is more around how can I do something that the rest are not doing? Like I think a lot of this idea of it's better to be different than better. Like if I do the same as the rest, but slightly better, nobody's ever gonna notice me. But if I do something that's scrappy, it's kind of shitty, but completely different, people are gonna be, wow, like why, what did you do here? Like, I don't know, with Clerk, for example, one thing that we did, we bought a van and we painted it all outside to say Clerk, and we cook cookies inside because cookies are related to authentication. And every night we check what meetup or YC meetup or development meetup or whatever, and we drive the van outside and we start cooking when the meetup is ending so people smell the cookies, come and eat the cookie and just see the brand. And there's a lot of people now that know of Clerk because they saw the van one night at one meetup, and we do every night it goes somewhere. We have a driver that every night does it. Nobody does something like that. And what I think is key there is the creativity, because it's not very tasteful, I think, to have a van outside of the event that is cooking. Like,
if you like cookies.
Well, if you like cookies, yeah, maybe it's a good taste. But that's where I think being creative and doing something that's different is a lot better than, I don't know, oh, let me do another webinar that is going to be the same as the rest of the webinars, but it's going to be 1% better. Like 1% better is not enough.
So I think one thing that's really unique about you all and Hypergrowth Partners is you get to work with all of these companies and you get to see from the inside out and all these companies that people look up to, right? And you get to pick which companies you work with, which is incredible. Most companies don't have that luxury in a lot of ways. And you get to talk to all these VCs. They're asking you about who is the best talent? How should I staff this team? What company's doing well? What are the primitives that matter the most now? Maybe we start with marketing versus like the whole company, right? Like marketing and growth right now. If you're a founder trying to figure out, you know, how to build a team, how to build a go-to-market engine.
So it kind of depends on obviously on the stage and where you're at and like, you know, how much of a team you do have. I think the reality that we would agree on is that most marketers are bad, and there's a reason for that. Okay, I'm not going to blame the people individually, but like there's a reason why senior marketers, CMOs, are bad. And the reason is, if you look into engineering, for example, there is a path for individuals to be exceptional ICs, individual contributors. You can be an L8 engineer at many of the large like startups and be very respected for that work and have a great life, and good for you.
That's true.
There's no such thing as an L8 marketer.
There's no technical track for marketing.
There's no IC track.
Yeah.
It's full stop. You do 4 or 5 years, you're good at it, you are in management. And after 6, 7 years, you stop doing the work at all, completely. Sure. And so all the CMOs who are like roughly 10 years, 12 years into their career here, or maybe more, have not done actual marketing work for like half a decade. And so now there's this wave of like AI workflows and whatnot coming on. They don't understand, they don't know. They haven't worked in so long that they cannot make it work. And that's why we're seeing like companies like yours, for example, at GoTex, and you're looking at a lot of the companies, like it's hard to educate the market because they don't get it, because they're completely disconnected. And so it's not that individually the people are bad, is that the entire like startup ecosystem has not solved for that problem. And you look at, there's 2 metrics that really I care about. Like what's the mean tenure of like CMOs? It is the shortest of all C-level, and we know that. All right, like the CMO tenure is like
18 months.
Yeah, it's down now.
Yes, it's 1 year and 2 months.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Just enough to hit that cliff. barely squeezing by.
And you look at a lot of the companies that we have advised. Look at React, for example. No CMO. Tried twice, failed. No CMO now. They give up. We don't need a CMO anymore. What we need is VPs and directors who will get the job done, who will oversee workflows.
Yeah.
Don't need CMOs anymore.
Exactly.
Because the value add they bring is too short.
Is the same true for sales? I'm just curious.
I don't know, but you know why? It's if I would have to like take a bet there, gut feeling, it's because the sales process in sales-led companies will still be done by humans for a while, which means there are AEs closing deals. And as long as there's AEs, there's like a whole management like layer above of that, which needs to exist. Okay, with goals and objectives and the whole shebang, right? Whereas in marketing, you don't need the people anymore. You need less people.
So why do you think that there's a track for a super senior engineer to still be productive, right? Distinguished engineer, I don't know what the titles are. And that's not the case for marketing. People get pushed to manage.
That's a question of incentives. And if you look at it, and that's why we are valuable, where we are value added at Hypergrowth as advisors into like high growth company. The incentives of marketers are misaligned with the outcomes of the company. If you're a senior marketer, you cannot afford to fail. If you fail a product launch, maybe just once, definitely twice, you're out. You're out. Okay? Then the work you're doing, it's not a Boolean answer, is it good or not good? It's a question of taste. And the taste comes from the CEO. It's not like code or like a product. The product actually works, delivers the features or doesn't. Here's a question of taste. And so what happens is that they are de-incentivized to take risk. The problem with that is that they're not creative, because creativity is taking risk.
It is.
Okay, and so that's a misalignment completely between what they should do to succeed, right, to stand out, and what they actually do to keep their job.
And I think there's 2 parts to that. Like you were asking about primitives, and I think the creativity also comes a lot from first principle thinking. And everybody's like, what is first principle thinking? But I think a lot about this idea on most marketers come with their folder of things that you need to do. I've done ads in the past, I've been successful, you should do ads. I've done ads in the past, you should do SEO. And nobody takes the time to really understand their ICP, do the research, understand the target market, to then do the creative things. Like every time we start working with a customer, I ask them and I do interviews. I do research with people who are in my target market but have never heard about the product, just to understand, like, how do you search for new products? How do you learn about things? Do you follow people on Twitter? Do you use Reddit? Do you use Facebook? Like, what are you using? Marketing to me is tapping into people's existing habits. So then it's like, how can I creatively show up in their habits multiple times? And if I don't understand my ICP, how can I do that? And most people don't do this first principle thinking on, okay, if marketing is tapping into people's habits, I need to understand their habits so that then I can think about how can I show up there more often. And And it could be something very stupid. Like, I don't know, Zoom, I think Zoom in the beginning blew up because they built an extension for Google Chrome that every time you were creating a calendar event, there was a button, thanks to the extension, that said, convert this to a Zoom meeting. Because that's where the user was, that's when they care about the meeting, and it would show up there. All of the competitors never did that, which to me was mind-blowing.
It's really shocking to us too. Like we do these things that are called like strategy sprints at the beginning for exactly that reason. We come into companies, like, no, we know what we want, just get to doing the work. And we're like, cool, like, can you send me a description of your company? It's what's on our website, but we're redoing the website next month. Okay, cool. And they're like, do you have any document or anything that just details all the features in your product and what your product does and how it works? Like, I guess like there's some stuff on YouTube, but look at the documentation. It's really outdated, but you can look at that. I was like, okay, cool, got it. What about your ICP? Who are you good for? I mean, I can pull some reports from Salesforce, I guess. And like you keep going and you're just like, wait, hold on. All the primitives that should drive all the building blocks of everything you do as a company, as a brand, how you communicate, how you interact, the knowledge, the building blocks, the context, right? They're talking about like context engineering is like completely an afterthought.
Yeah.
But then like you get to the final thing, like you get to like a blog post and the CEO wants to line edit the blog post. And you're like, you're spending all this time on polishing the output instead of focusing on the primitives, the inputs.
And nobody questions the assumptions. That's the other thing that blows my mind. Like, people are like, oh, why are you doing ads now? Why do you want to do content? Because everybody's doing content and I know SEO works. But does your ICP search on Google? Do they use ChatGPT? We, as marketers, I think, are not taught to question the assumptions. We are taught that there's frameworks, and if we follow the frameworks, things will work. But if following the frameworks made all companies successful, every company would be successful. So why aren't they? Because they don't question assumptions, they don't start things from first principles, they don't do research, and they don't try to do things that are different.
I think I want to go back to this parallel between like the engineers and the marketers, which is interesting because like if you think about it, like when everybody does what the CEO tells you to do, like regardless of the job function, right? But if you look at engineering or product, like the leadership team asks you to deliver something which is like the output product. They say, hey, we want this feature, we want this product, right? They don't tell you like exactly how to build it in the nitty-gritty details. It's different for marketing. For marketing, like it tends to be that they will tell you like exactly how you should run the campaign and what you should do. And so like there's a lot less like freedom or like space for creativity. I've worked with more than 100 companies over the past like 7 years. I can tell you like the number of founders in a high growth company that will let their team take the risk is extremely small. The other thing, again, going back to this parallel, is that engineers tend to have this good practices in engineering of how you build product and how you code, right? Documentation is one of them, of your code.
PRD, like
a couple of things. And we like, there's pull requests and there's like tools for that to understand this. The product is, the code is reviewed. There's no such like good practices that are standard in marketing at all. Like almost every team does it the way you want. And what you described here for lack of ICP, for example, we see that all the time, and it impacts not just marketing, it impacts sales, it impacts like everyone. I was with a 1,000-person company, a pretty great logo, and they don't have an ICP yet, okay, at 1,000 person. And then I question, like, what is the process that you're using to build an ICP? Like, oh, like, I guess they're doing user interviews, right? I drilled down into the process, and that's where you see the problem with the marketing skills. They don't understand, like, how the math actually works. They are looking at recordings of the closed one. You're missing all the people who did not take the call. And so the entire TAM of the entire market, you look at the people who said yes to your current value prop, all right? That is not how you build an ICP. That good practice is lost. And that problem, which is like one example, that problem we see everywhere. There's no standards for how you should do things.
So to your point, like the incentives for marketing is totally different. But I think at the same level, like the nature of the work is totally different too. Like code, somewhat deterministic.
Absolutely.
And because of that, you can have this gigantic ecosystem where, and for myself, like I've written a lot of code. Working on code feels like it's compounding. Like every bit of work I add, my colleague adds, makes it bigger. For marketing, I think it's just totally different.
Marketing is similar to product. And then the implementation is, or how you do it is more similar to engineering. Like when I think about product, I think you have a PRD, and in product you think about bets. I think that this feature will be useful. It's a bet. How big of a bet is it? Is it very hard to implement? What's the potential, etc.? And I think in marketing, from a growth perspective, you can do the same. So for example, it's like for this quarter, we can do 1 big bet, 2 medium bets, 3 small bets. What are those bets gonna be? And then in product, you do research, talking to customers and non-customers, understand what are those bets. In marketing, then you do the same. Once you decide what you're going to build from product, you send it to engineering, which I think is more deterministic as well. In marketing, ideally, it's the same. You have the people who are maybe the leaders of the team or the growth people who are experimenting, doing, I think, the research to define the MRD or however you call it, which is defining the bets. But once the bets are defined, you then need the people who implement it, who are the field marketers, who are the marketing ops people, etc., who are implementing the bets that was decided. I think the work of a marketing ops person or potentially a field marketer is a lot more deterministic. So to me, the problem is that we're comparing engineering to the marketing decision when we should separate product and engineering and marketing, the thinking of the bets, compared to the people who will then implement and execute it. When you get to a big company, you separate the researcher from the person who comes up with ideas. And that, to me, is a huge mistake. Because how you do the research will depend on how you're thinking about ideas. So to me, it's like you have the idea person is a person who does the research, and then based on the research will come up with ideas. Once you have the ideas, I think somebody's like, okay, how do we implement this idea in a better way? Yeah. That's to me the architectural process that has something more deterministic. And then after that, you have like, okay, who will validate that the output is high bar or something like that?
Every time that founders ask me like how to hire a growth person, and I think about it, I always land on like effective craziness is what it is, right? You're looking for somebody who's both very creative to the point of craziness, but has an approach to experimentation that is very rigorous, very scientific. And the combo of those two things is extremely rare because it just goes like this different brain.
But if you pick one, and this is my controversial thought, is everybody will tell you a growth person has to be extremely data focused. I would rather have somebody that is creative and good at doing research than actually good with data. I care more that they are competitive, because if they're competitive, they will care about what are the end results of what they do, even if they can't get the data. But you can get a business analyst or a data analyst who brings the data for you, and then you have the idea, you know how to implement it, you use this data analyst to get the data, and then if you're competitive, you will push for it. But everybody talks about how growth is understanding data, but if you don't know the questions, data can tell you nothing. So if you're good at data but don't have the rest, you will suck at a growth person.
That vision of growth comes from B2C, where they have huge numbers and like eking out 2% works out, all right? Which is like in B2B, that's not the case. In B2B, you've got to be very creative so that you can see a signal, like because it stands out and like in StatSig.
I mean, if you're doing 10 deals a year, you know, it's like, and your sales cycle's 12 months.
I mean, you need conviction to make a bet, right?
You do need conviction for sure.
But that's where I think my work as a growth person, right? My work is very similar to that of an angel investor, to an early stage investor, because I've got limited data. I need to build some conviction about like what is likely to work, and I need to put my bets, all right? And I need to double down on my bets. It is like very, very similar. Whereas what we're discovering like B2C growth and late stage growth, it's like it's growth scale investing. Like everybody knows like a ramp is going to win, or like, you know, like OpenAI. If you're investing in OpenAI now, like you're eking out a very small market.
Everybody knows ramp beat Brax already.
I mean, I really like the distinction between like strategy and planning and the people that are kind of building. And I think just to go back to like the parallel with engineering again, like product managers have a certain skill set to break down a certain outcome into something that can be executed on. I think a huge gap we see is, for the most part, marketers and growth people, outside of a special few that maybe worked in product, have a hard time breaking things down for this new category of people, RevOps, marketing ops, to build something meaningful. And I think with AI, like more and more things can be, I don't know, encoded in these processes. So that's why you see more of these people. But I don't know if the strategy and planning folks are kind of learning how to be better, almost like product managers.
The number of times I would be, coming into a team that was already existing, and some people I hired too, and you would ask them for something, and like, hey, can you update this landing page? It's like, I'm just not very good at writing. It's like, hey, can you come up with a campaign? I'm just not very creative. And it's like, hey, can you pull some data? It's like, I'm not a numbers person. What are you good at then? Marketers for a while just needed to be generalist in everything, and they never became specialist in anything. I don't know that many marketers are just really damn good at writing.
I agree. And I think what's interesting to me is, like, I don't consider myself the best writer, for example, but there's only one way to become a better writer.
Exactly.
Writing. There's the only way. So how do you do it? I will write landing pages, and if they suck, but I will continue to try. And there's one phrase that I love, like, that I think all the time when I'm writing something is, the objective of each sentence is that people read the next sentence. That's it. So if you think about that, it's like, it has to be interesting enough that people read the next one, and then the next one, the next one. And then it's not that big of a challenge. It's like, okay, atomically, this sentence has to be interesting to get the next one. That's it. And I think that mindset can help people at least try and do things when they're scared. But I think people are, in general, scared of doing things they've never done. And if you don't do it, you will never learn and you will never get better. And even if it's not interesting, like numbers, I'm not good at numbers. With AI now, maybe you can do something. Like one of the companies I was chatting, and the person was telling me, like, no, I don't know how to like get this data. And like they were using Databricks, and Databricks now allows you to actually write a prompt, and the prompt will do the query for you and get you the data. And it's like, you don't know how to write a prompt? Yeah, but I don't know. Like, just do it and try do something. Like, you don't need the best data warehouse and the charting platform to get some data. Just prompt something, you'll get an answer, and maybe if it's not the one, you can prompt again and ask another thing.
And so that's where now you start to wonder, what's the value of the human? All right, if the human doesn't have the skill and is asking the AI to like build the prompts, and so you wonder like, what are the valuable skills that we're looking for in humans? So what is left? What is left? And I think what's left at the end, right, is being creative in such a way that the AI wouldn't.
It's creative and research. I always start my research with 10 questions. And then for every customer, I do the first 2 or 3 myself, because the interesting part is not on the 10 original questions. Okay. It's on, what are you telling me? And then based on what you're telling me, it's like, oh, wait. You said this thing. Let's dive deeper into that. What does it mean?
Okay, so let's take an example. I like that. So let's say your first day at Ramp. Tell me more about the research you're going to do.
I'll tell you an example. Like I just did it, like I'm working now for an API management company. And they were like, okay, our users are all directors of engineering, and they are really looking forward for a new forward-looking API management. So I started to ask questions. I'm like, okay, what things do you want to learn about API management? First question. Yeah. I don't want to learn anything about it because I already know what's the basic. Wait. You don't want to learn anything about it? There's nothing new? Oh, I actually want to learn more about AI and MCP and this and that. And it's like, okay, then you want to learn about something, maybe not related to API management. What if API management will be related to those topics? Oh, then maybe that's interesting. And then when I ask them like, okay, and how do you make decisions for purchase? Oh, I always ask my peers and do this and do that. But then when I was interviewing later, they told me that for something in particular that they bought for their kid, they used ChatGPT. And I was like, wait. You use ChatGPT for what to buy for your kid, but not for API management? And I was like, oh, you're right. I actually did do something for API management on ChatGPT. Let me look at my query. They went into ChatGPT and they're like, oh, I found the first 3 options in ChatGPT. And then from those, I asked somebody else to research that. But you forgot you used ChatGPT? Yeah, because it was the first step. So if I wouldn't have listened, for example, in that case, that he used ChatGPT to give a gift to her kid, I would have never asked, wait, use it for one thing but not the other. And that's where the digging and understanding what they say and then re-asking based off of that is what makes a difference.
I worked with a company in the HR space last year, and we were doing outbound email, and the outbound email was just not working out. Right? The response rates were like close to 0, even though like we were checking and we were doing all the usual good practices. And so you wonder, like, at what point is this we have the wrong audience, wrong ICP, the wrong message, the wrong product? One of those things or all of them must be broken. So how do you find out? You could do research like that. You could talk to people. Yeah. My approach was just like, I like debugging. The one thing I love debugging. And so at scale, effective craziness, I found an idea. Like, well, let's reuse our infrastructure to send emails. Let's not to the same audience, but let's change the product, the message. And so what we did is that instead of asking them like, if you're interested, something completely different. We told them, we have a gift for you, it's being sent at this address. But because I am a psychological nerd, what we did is that we offset the address on purpose by 2 numbers, right? So they knew the package would be at the neighbor's office, which anyone hates. Everyone hates getting a call from your neighbor or like having to go pick a package at your neighbor's office, and the whole thing, you're going to lose an enormous amount of time. The response rate was 12%. 12%.
They're alive. The humans are alive. They live.
12% is a very, very high number in cold email. Very, very high. And so what you knew, the infrastructure works. The audience is alive. They're the right people. They just don't care about the product.
G is single-handedly the reason email doesn't work as a channel. That's it.
That is effective craziness because I know psychologically that's going to work. I know how, and that enables me to debug the components here of my strategy. And now I know I have a product problem.
So as a founder of a company or a marketing leader, like how do you build for effective craziness?
You create trust. If I look back at Ramp, for example, talking about Ramp here for a second, Ramp is one of the few companies at a very late stage supports, helps, and enforces growth. And like Kareem, the co-founder, never shut down an initiative that I had for which I had good arguments. Never. He questions it, for sure. He debates it, but like he will never be against it.
And he seemed decisive too, him and Eric, right?
But
Which is rare.
Most founders that I work with are afraid of the downside. And so when they want the outcomes, but when I present like some risky, those are investments. Investments are by definition risky, right? They might fail, they might backfire. It's the same thing in growth and marketing. I don't know what's gonna work, but if I ship 100 growth projects that are very different, very out there, a few of them are going to work and they're going to pay off.
And that's kind of how we think about like even content. The way we think about content is how many shots on goal or how many seeds can I plant that are really high quality seeds? And then how can I systematically continue to improve and iterate on those seeds and learn as quickly as possible and increase my learnings, right? Like, because if you do, let's say, one piece of content a month, you only have one opportunity to learn.
Just to be clear, most marketing teams do the traditional way. They have a launch a quarter or something like that. They've got a few like large editorial pieces. That's it. And they just don't get any signal. It's not different from anything else they've done in the past.
And to me, the way to do that, like I worked mostly with dev tools. So I would say most of the founders I work are engineers. So the way to convince them to try weird shit is around guardrails. It's like, okay, let's define together which are the things that you for sure do not want to change and do not want to touch. Like pricing has to always be transparent. Sure, we'll never touch that. And I think once you agree on like what are the untouchables, what are the non-negotiables that we're never going to test, anything that's not in this list, you cannot give me shit if I try it. And then once we agree with that, then it's easy. It's like, okay, give me 6 months to just try things that are not in here. And if they work, they work. If they don't work, they don't work. I gave you the chance. After that, I can do whatever.
I think like I've done some of my best work, I think, at Deepgram, and I think it was the first time in my career where I didn't feel in fear of my job. Like, and that's rare. And I think what you're describing is how marketing leaders should be, right? Like they're bold, they're pushing the envelope with CEOs, they're figuring out where the guardrails are, but they don't feel comfortable with that. I've never felt comfortable with that.
The tenure is 1 year and 2 months. Why would they feel comfortable?
Most fantastic CEOs now are on Twitter and are marketing. Anton from Lovable, absolutely incredible on Twitter, on sharing things, on what to do and why. Guillermo from Vercel, #1 marketer. He responds to everybody complaining about something. He sends DMs to people. He's there. The CEO of Perplexity, all the time talking about the product. Now, the best founders are marketers in the sense of influencers.
Yeah.
I think now,
Creators,
exactly, now is the era of influencers for B2B. For B2C, influencers have been there forever, or for a lot of years.
I don't know
B2B,
if
we
it's
take
as common though. Like I think you have people that love the attention and became very good at that,
Yes.
right? For better or worse, or because of trying, or somebody forced them to do it, right? Or it was just second nature, right? But for most founders I worked with, and most founders that are not charismatic, are not already out there, they're not doing the marketing. They're definitely not doing the day-to-day of marketing. They want to delegate marketing. They will get on sales calls sometimes. They will close deals at first. And it's very well known that the first sales hire after founder-led is the most likely to get fired.
Yes.
You know? And so it's almost like trying to delegate something you don't know what it is, and you are an engineer, for instance, like you have no empathy for what it takes to do well. You don't even know what it's going to work and not work.
That's true. I do agree that the founder needs to do more. I think now there's more that are in marketing. And to me, that's where you need to build the trust with them on like the guardrails plus the time. Like give me at least this amount of time to try things. I think if you can have both of those things, even if they haven't done it, like it will be okay. The first time I worked on marketing after being an engineer in Auth0, I did 50% of the things that I wanted to do, I did them. The other 50% I was scared because like people were telling me I shouldn't do that because others don't do it. And I was like, they have 10 years more of experience than me. Maybe they are right. Yeah. So now it's like, fuck it, I'm gonna try them all. As a marketing leader, you need to have half of the team with experience, but I'm a big believer that half should have no experience on marketing whatsoever, because they will have other ideas that the others, that they are not biased. They don't have the curse of knowledge.
I think it's about setting expectations. I have a growth friend who, like, I borrow from his idea now. When he joined his company like a few years ago, he set expectations that he's gonna have 3 big wins with the founder in the first 6 months. Then he went to his team, and his guys going to ship 20 things in the first 3 months, because that's the success rate I predict. And then the time for things to build. I do that now with all the companies I work with. I go to the founder, I'm like, hey, what's the success rate of startups at the Series A? I'm like 10%, 5%, 3%? Sure, okay. I'm gonna have the same success rate.
I'm Series A.
Your chance of succeeding as a company is going to be the same chance as me succeeding as a leader. Cool. I like that.
So I need to be able to fail 30 times in a row before you give me shit. Okay? Otherwise, I'm not taking the contract. If you want me to take risk and have some big outcomes, I cannot change the odds. I don't make I don't make the math. I just play the game.
Let me just tell you one thing, because like I love that, because I think one of the things I really appreciate about you both and about Hypergrowth is the fact that you're helping to balance things out a bit there, you know, and you created this like awesome collective of superpowers, of like, you know, amazing, intelligent people. So many people look up to both of you and all the partners that work with you, right? But that helps, because like that level of conversation doesn't happen very often. Today, like if someone, you know, was trying to hire me, you know, I could say that I'm not going to take this unless this, and this, right? And I think there needs to be kind of like this kind of like balancing act, and someone kind of talking sense into founders. And
otherwise, they can just have like the normal outcome, like every marketing team is going to bring them, which is they try to succeed 100% of the time, and they're going to have very average outcomes.
Or no outcomes, because right now the average is being scaled out, right?
How much risk is the founder and the team willing to take? Yeah. I love taking risk, and I love being extremely aggressive, like extremely aggressive. I love competitive environments. That's where I thrive. Okay, but that comes, like, you want to win the CAC war here, you're gonna have to take.
I would not want to compete against you. Like, I would not want to be Brax if you're working for Ramp. Let's just put it that way.
and there are like a lot of the things that I do. I'm looking at smaller companies that have no choice but to take the risks, and I learn from that and I scale it out.
Yeah.
Like, what are the crazy things that small companies do to survive that I can scale out at the Series F?
The way I think about it, there's only one time in our lifetime where every single knowledge worker is going to need to retool themselves. Several 100 million knowledge workers are going to need to reinvent themselves and relearn everything there is to do related to their knowledge. And yeah, like almost every marketing leader, I don't know if you were hearing the same thing, they come to me and they're like, okay, so my CEO read this letter from the Shopify CEO that says we have to be AI native. You know, so you have like this universe of people, they're all like looking up to folks like you, right? And they're like looking for guidance, they're trying to reinvent themselves, and then they're busier than they've ever been because they just didn't hire anybody for the last 2 years. They're being flooded with tools left and right. Oh, have you seen this? Have you seen that tool? And they're just like lost.
If you had to wait for your CEO to tell you that you have to be AI native, you probably suck and should be fired. Like, that's the sad truth for most of them. There's so many people, like you are on Twitter, everybody's talking about AI. At least spend a couple of hours just seeing what you can do and what you can try. And at least then it's like book yourself time to do it. That's what I work a lot with the people that I work. Like I think most people now live by their calendars. So if you live by your calendar, book yourself 2 hours every day to explore and try things with AI. If you do that, at least you'll get an idea and you'll get to learn something. You'll get to explore and stuff like that. But otherwise, if you just let your work as it is right now to continue, you will never have time for anything.
I think as CMO, and as just a senior, like, you know, knowledge worker, with like more than 10 years, 15 years of experience, your job, your core job is to use that experience to make a prediction about the future. I think most people fail at that. They're living in the present and they're not making a prediction of where will we be 6 months, 9 months from now. And that is probably the biggest mistake that they're doing. Like, look at like the usage of AI, look at the traffic coming from like GPT and Perplexity and a few others. Okay, it's like what, 5, 7, 10%. I was at the CMO conference recently, and ask them like, what will you do when it ends up at 20%? And people think, do you think it's gonna be 20%? Like, just look at the curve. Look at the damn curve. Like, you think the curve is gonna flame out right now? Like, that is the biggest mistake I can imagine. The second thing is, if you're a good investor, you should invest before, right? So who's spending 20% of their budget and headcount towards like presence on LLMs? No one. Absolutely no one. And so you're failing at your core job of making a prediction and acting on it.
Those predictions are not that hard. I used to Google everything, open 10 pages to decide what to buy. Now I do deep research to choose what to buy, and I will trust what ChatGPT says. If I do that, most of the people probably do the same because we're all humans sort of similar. So why didn't I think that people are gonna do that and then focus on that?
Let's do some user research here. Like to double click on that, we were talking with VCs this week, right? Successful VCs that have like, let's say like unlimited personal capital to buy stuff on Amazon, okay? Where price is not a problem. And I have been asking them this one question. At what is the dollar figure at which you kickstart a GPT request to figure out which product you should buy? Is it $10, $100? Like when is the friction, the effort of doing that worth it? And when do you do a deep research? And the answer comes back as pretty much $0. That's very interesting. As a marketer, our audience is the rest of the world. And what we're seeing, what marketers should realize is that the consumers, businesses of consumers, are delegating that choice, that stressful choice, to the LLM agent. That means something about the buying process, about the decision-making process that we should account for. And when I tell that to most marketers, like they had not thought about it. But if we all are, as consumers, are delegating our choice in like our personal lives and our business lives, then it means that we, as marketers, are marketing to the wrong economic agent, to the human, but not to the LLM who's making the decisions.
Of course, like, hey, LLMs reward recency and freshness of content, great. Hey, LLMs reward like really well-researched content with like a lot of citations and really well organized. Sure, humans like that too, by the way. Most of these things are like not different from what you should be optimized for, which is the human.
I think to some extent that's a view of the past. I think you care about the human too much.
I think. Ooh. Doomsday. I like it.
I think
Tell me more.
Okay, Anthropic launches MCP. Okay, which means that an LLM is going to be able to use other services to achieve its goal. Okay, and there's like credits and whatnot. And so, how hard is it to imagine that 6 months now, 9 months down the line, when I want to build something, the LLM agent will find the best product to achieve its goal, buy the credits on my behalf, use the product, and then get out of there. What I think is the agent will be making the purchase decisions. And if that's the case, then our job is to influence the agent for the sole purpose of influencing the agent, not to get the human behind it.
And I do think they are different. Like, for example, I'll tell you when I'm working with some of my customers, it's like ChatGPT and Claude, they all have memory now. So they know what you do for a living, what you search, stuff like that. And if you start asking questions depending on your role, they will give you sometimes different answers. So to me, it's not that we fully forget about the human, but it's that the human is important through the lens of that agent or LLM. You're asking if they behave differently. They do. A human reads the first 2 results of Google. The agent will read the first 12 to 13. Being in a lot more keywords makes more sense instead of just one. Answering specific questions that people might have for specific personas also, I think, makes sense. So I think thinking more about the agent makes sense. And then based on the research, what I heard from everybody now is they will use ChatGPT to get what are the main options. Once they have the main 2 or 3 options, they will have a human assigned to do the research. But that's the second step. So that means that if you don't show up in ChatGPT in the beginning, you're out of the conversation. But if you show up there, then having good content for the human does make sense. So to me, it's a 2-step thing where you have to show up as one of the options for the LLM, and that's the number 1 important thing. And then for each of those, you need to show up for the human as well, because they are going to be doing the specific research as well.
If you use Lovable recently, like, or any of those like vibe coding platforms, like you prompt it, it builds a plan, and then you need to approve the plan. And most of the time, we just don't review the plan. We just click on the button. Okay, because like that's the whole point. I'm not going to read through all the steps and all the SQL requests. Now let's imagine like a year from now, a CEO is going to go into like a LLM agent and say, optimize the costs of my RevOps function. And what the agent is going to do is going to build a plan of like which services to churn from, which employees to let go of, but mostly like which SaaS to churn from and replace with a lower cost, more efficient SaaS. And he's going to click on implement the plan, and it's going to churn, migrate the data, and move it to the new thing. At what point is the CEO the one who's deciding this versus just clicking on the button? And as a marketer of this new SaaS or the old SaaS trying to prevent the churn, who should we influence? The CEO doesn't matter here.
I feel like we're in an episode of Black Mirror now.
I think the point here is G is thinking in the future.
I like it.
Like you're
We need
projecting
people like you. We need
and
people like
planning
you.
for that future.
Exactly, and that's why people look up to you. And the way I kind of think about it is, people have been working on self-driving cars for 20 years. And they invested billions and billions and then billions of dollars. What percentage of miles today are self-driven with 0 wheels? Like nobody in the wheels. Like still very, very,
Way more, yeah.
in San Francisco, maybe 1%. So then if you think about like that happened to any technological shift to the cloud, everybody's gonna be on the cloud. And like everybody's building the biggest data centers in the planet now. My thinking here is, like when we see some of the companies that we talk to and we just see it like, hey, it took 6 months for them to literally approve something. For me, I'm like, one, these companies might not exist in 5 years because like everybody's gonna move so much faster than them. But that aside, I feel like there's still a massive group of individuals and companies that are here that haven't even done this. Like what we're seeing, like we run over 1 million workflows a month now. And what we're seeing is like our workflows are not getting simpler. They're having more steps that have way more thoughtful processes. Like I was showing you an example earlier, right? Like this company in the healthcare space, and we did all these steps, all these things, and then we have an editor that just understands their business so well and their audience so well, and we have this chief medical officer that reviewed the content and gave it this comment, and so we took those comments and tried to reproduce and create a digital twin of this expert. So now we just added like bunch of layers of like steps to get to 95% output instead of 90%. That iteration where you said, hey, it's going to come up with a plan, we don't even look at the plan, we're just going to hit run. It might be true for certain things, but I think for knowledge work, it's going to be a while before it goes from 1,000 steps down to 1 click.
But I think where it's different, at least in my mind, is like my mom is scared to go into a Waymo.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's nobody driving. My mom uses ChatGPT and doesn't use Google anymore. Yeah. Because she likes the reply. Getting something that is trained, that people believe in, that works on cars takes forever. The jump of like, I ask ChatGPT something and it gives me an answer that is actually pretty good for 3 times, now I trust it. I think the verge to get to ChatGPT is so much lower that I do think that people will use ChatGPT, even my mom, who is 60-something, even my granddad, who is 90, is using ChatGPT. And if anybody could use ChatGPT, then I think that it's gonna go a lot faster than autonomous car on getting adopted.
So you would trust it to run your books and submit your taxes to the IRS? It might be a while before you did that,
No.
Yeah.
I believe it's funny. We were talking about something very similar here because we need to like basically build like a CARTA of sorts for hypergrowth to like understand like all of our assets like in all the companies and all the partners. And of course, there's no such product that exists. And so I vibe coded a product over the weekend, right? And we had a debate of like, hey, this is obviously looking much better than a spreadsheet. It is fancier. Now, do we trust the calculations behind the scenes when I just like spot check the calculation?
Do we trust the security that nobody can hack it because they can get private information?
I am the guy who will take the risk. I believe in the future so much. Like you were talking about the cloud. I come from a time when I come from dial-up. I installed my own rack servers at my hosting provider because that's how it worked. You would buy your server and you'd put in the rack. The way I survived throughout all those different like cycles is by projecting myself into like what will the future be and trying to like be ahead of the game and not trying to solve for today's problems. Like today's, like most people think of today's problems and just go back to like this, like all of these generations using GPT, right? And trusting GPT for the answers, which I like. We all do that. When I buy stuff on Amazon, I'm gonna like ask for the best like mosquito repellent. It gives me 3, and I just like buy one of those 3. Okay, and it's doing 2 things. It's training my brain to like offload the decision process, the friction, the effort, the stress of doing that, and it's helping me consume more. Everybody I've asked is now buying more things because of or thanks to GPT, because there's less stress about making the wrong decision.
I really liked your comparison to investing. So let's bring it back to like growth and GTM and marketing. If you're an investor there, and I think actually you are an investor there, what are you investing?
So if you think about where you're going into the future, right? You guys are doing workflows, complex workflows, which are, to some extent replacing human work. So you project yourself, there's going to be less engineers required into the future. Still engineers for sure, right? But like it's going to be a niche job. So you think about that. You think in marketing, the people who will remain are people who are creative. You just think about that and you see, well, okay, that changes a lot of things. Maybe I invest less in HR platforms these days because like humans, not so good, not as valuable as an asset. Maybe I invest in things that are right now hybrid work for platforms. And so I really split it like most investors in between like what's really core AI. So like all of the models, the infrastructure and all of that. What's the application layer? What's valuable in the application layer? And is the application layer used by humans who will disappear? That's what I think about. Right? So if you want things that are resilient into the future, you want things where the output is still there, regardless or not, if there's a human involved.
And I want to try do a couple of like quick rounds here. We were talking earlier, and you had this 3-question framework. What psychological principle am I leveraging, and does it match my audience? What's the mathematical impact if this works? Is it worth my time? What's the total addressable market if I execute this perfectly?
So yeah, I think the parallel between like the investing and growth here is that you got to, if you think of like an investor like Sequoia, they always ask you the question of like, is this going to be $1 billion company? Like, what's the maximum size this thing could reach? And we think of like a growth experiment or a marketing experiment, like it's very much the same. Like you got to wonder, what is the maximum impact this thing could have if I want to scale it? Like how many people can I touch at its maximum? What is the impact that it's going to have? Like if I send a pair of AirPods, for example, to every CFO and I'm a ramp in the US, what is the lift that it generates? What's a core lift? Is it worth the CAC? Psychological is important because that's the one thing that LLMs have a hard time leveraging. That's what's left for us as humans that we understand well. And so there's a few core psychological principles that you can scale out in different channels, right? Going back to this AirPods example, like it's reciprocity. And so you really got to think, how will people react? What is the core, reptilian part of the brain that I'm trying to access here? Am I effectively addressing that, accessing this part of their brain? And I always make parallels when I express those ideas. And I think it's very important. And so if you go back to the outbound emails, you are at home, you have this like mailbox, all right, where people send you like mostly like junk mail, physical junk mail, and you will trash it without any remorse or feeling. Okay, you don't care about it, right? Because it's done automatically. But now you sift through it quickly, and in that pile of junk, there's this letter that's obviously scribbled by an old grandma who's 90 years old, maybe like, his grandpa. And
doesn't get in a Waymo, but uses ChatGPT every day.
React, right? It's scribbled. He took a stamp, licked the stamp, and put it on the envelope. How likely, and you don't know that person, how likely are you to take that envelope and trash it with no remorse? None. Because if you do that, you're a psychopath. You are completely outside of the bounds of human society, right? Which means you're not curious and you feel no reciprocity. The people who have that have been excluded from society long ago, okay? Long ago. They were kicked out of the cave, okay? And so you got to access that. You got to understand it and access it. So now we say, let's imagine that you could scale the feeling of curiosity and reciprocity to your entire market. What would the impact be? Huge. And obviously, there's a risk of deceit that you're using here. There's some downsides risk, right? And now wrapping that back up to the beginning of the podcast, you gotta think like, how do I leverage that in the most effective way without breaking my market? Is the risk worth the outcome? And that's the investment decision you need to make. As a growth leader, you need to like look at that really good data and make that assessment.
And I think what people don't realize on this is how easy it is to say sorry. Like I was talking with one of our customers that they tried something, didn't work out, and they were trying to write a blog post to explain what happened and stuff like that. And my only feedback when I read it is, if you explain things but don't say sorry when you fuck up, nobody's gonna believe you. Just say sorry, like nobody cares.
Regardless of the medium, you gotta think of your audience. Why would they care? The answer is like, there's no reason for me to care. They're not capable of transmitting emotions for me to care all right, at all. They're not capable of tapping into my reptilian brain. They're not making use of like, what are my pain points? What are the things that, I'm living through right now that would force me to care? There's nothing good in there. There's nothing good that pushes me to consider the email. And so I have no remorse, no process. Like, I don't care. One of the things, going back to this, like, you're asking, do we live in a Black Mirror episode right now? Like, there is a risk that by scaling Clay and like other LLM-based like emails, which produces great copy but not a lot of emotions, we end up in a world where people read or trust the emails less and less, and they stop reading emails entirely, and we're killing emails as a channel.
Did you see the survey on psychologists? Like, there were a lot of psychologists that were actually reading, and they were comparing without knowing if the psychology was ChatGPT or a human. And the results was that most people thought that ChatGPT was more empathetic and had a better emotional connection with humans. So then, I'm not sure it's gonna be true that whatever ChatGPT writes is gonna sound or be less emotional. Because what's interesting to me is ChatGPT learns how to write from the best of us. So then it can be empathetic, it can be emotional. A psychologist might have a bad day and be like, fuck this guy, like, I don't care. And then you're not empathetic that day. ChatGPT never has a bad day.
I don't know. It's had a lot of bad days for me recently, but I love that. Well, maybe to wrap up, on behalf of the whole growth community, I want to say thank you to you both. I was joking that I've never seen a video of both of you together, so I was like, both of you are here, and I was like, please, you both have to do the video together. The number of people that I mentioned that I even know you all, and they're like, oh, G and Gonto? Oh my God, and I think that's cool when you're doing work and you're enjoying your lives like I know you are, and you are prioritizing family and you're also doing meaningful work, and people look up to you and people are inspired by you. I think you're hitting all the important checks in life, and so I admire you both, and on behalf of everybody, thank you both for everything you do for us.
Wow, this is hard to live up to that.
Yeah, exactly.
What can I say? I think we're very happy with what we've built. Extremely happy. We're happy of the 100-ish customers, portfolio companies that we've helped in the past 4.5 years, for sure. We're looking forward to being able to ride this new cycle, this new wave for the portfolio companies, and have even more impact in the future, and be able to improve marketing and growth for everyone.
And as a side note, when you go to a supermarket and you have the certified organic, it needs to have a certified hypergrowth, On that note, thank you.
Thank you.
This is awesome.
Thank you for inviting.